Welcome friends to the 2023 Mazda CX-50 review. I know that there is a lot of confusion behind this car, so let me just get some of those main questions out of the way first. The new CX-50 is not based on the CX-5. In fact, it is riding on its own new platform. Second, the CX-50 is not a replacement for the CX-5. Both of these SUVs will be sold side by side in a dealership together. In fact, the CX-5 is the #1 best-selling vehicle for Mazda, so they are not just going to ditch that. The CX-50, just so you know, this is built specifically for the United States market, and this doesn't need to make sense, okay? This is going to sell in this country simply because this is an SUV. It's a vehicle that's sitting on stilts, so this will naturally sell. It doesn't need to make sense, but I'll try to make sense of it, and I'll try to explain it the way Mazda will kind of want me to explain it, and that is the CX-50. This is the most off-road capable Mazda product, if you will. It's not a Jeep Wrangler. It is not a Ford Bronco. It's not even like a Range Rover or a Lexus LX or anything like that. It's meant to tackle mild off-roading, like what most people in this country will pretty much tackle, such as gravel roads or dirt roads or slight inclines. That's what this CX-50 is meant to tackle, and this certainly has a different set of capabilities compared to a CX-5. The CX-50, when equipped with the turbocharged engine, it can tow up to 3,500 pounds, whereas the CX-5 Mazda, even if you get the turbo engine, it can only tow up to 2,000 pounds. So that's a big difference right there. But one of the biggest differences between a CX-5 and this model here is the looks. So let's go ahead and let's transition over into that. I love the way this CX-50 looks. It's really got an aggressive look and demeanor to it. In fact, it even reminds me of the Acura MDX in the way that this looks, because it's got these wide haunches in the rear. It's a little bit more squared off, a little bit more of a boxy design, especially compared to the CX-5, where that one sort of looked like a rounded off egg shape. This is not like that. This is much more aggressive, and I appreciate the stance. I like the front end, and like with most journalist press cars, we do have here the fully loaded Turbo Premium Plus with all the features and gadgets, which we will go into more details during the interior segment. But because of that, we have here one of the more expensive models, almost 44 grand, I believe, is the MSRP of this vehicle as tested. But don't worry, I'm going to be talking about the other trim levels as well. But because this is a highly spec model, we have here these sick looking 20-inch wheels. I really love the way these wheels look. In fact, it's probably one of the best wheel designs from Mazda, and you really do have to pay a pretty penny to get a hold of these wheels, because we do have your two engine options, the regular non-turbocharged 4-cylinder and this turbo model that we have here. It's the same drivetrain setup that we've seen in other Mazda products before. If you want to get these 20-inch wheels on the non-turbo model, you're paying 38 grand. That's a lot of money. And at that point, you might as well just spend a couple extra grand, 3-4 grand more, and get the turbo engine. And that's something you need to understand. You are paying a premium for the CX-50 over the CX-5 simply because of the looks and the perceived off-road capability that this is supposed to offer. But anyway, other things to keep in mind: the overall length of this car is about 185 inches long. That's about 5 inches longer than the CX-5, and the wheelbase is 110 inches, which is about 4 inches longer than the CX-5 at 106 inches. So this is sized and shaped like a typical mid-size SUV. It should be able to fit in most people's garages quite easily. And even on the inside, they're both about the same as well, and I'll talk about that in more detail during the interior segment. But overall, please let me know your thoughts on the looks of this CX-50. I really appreciate it. I like how they made this specifically for the United States market, so they can actually make a car that's a little bit wider and longer, just so they can nail the looks of it. But once again, you're paying a premium for that, and we'll break down the different trim levels, models, prices more towards the end of the video during the conclusions. But for right now, let's transition over into this driving segment, because that's where a lot of the main changes have occurred, primarily with the suspension. Okay, the big change between the CX-5 and the CX-50, I already mentioned that this rides on a new platform, but we also have here a torsion beam rear suspension as opposed to the multi-link rear suspension found in the CX-5. What does that mean to the average consumer? Well, in layman's terms, the multi-link suspension, that is a more superior and sophisticated setup on paper compared to the torsion beam. A torsion beam rear suspension is one of the cheaper suspension architectures that you can implement into a car. Double wishbones, multi-links, that's the superior setup. However, they have not sacrificed anything here with the CX-50, and that's precisely why I don't care. This pretty much rides and handles identical to a CX-5, and we've seen this before in cars like the Mazda 3 or the Mazda CX-30, where they handle and ride amazing, because Mazda's torsion beam is unlike most other companies. They really put a lot of thought and development and time into their torsion beams and their suspension in general. So that's why there's no real sacrifices here. But why did they go with the torsion beams? Again, this is one of those off-road type SUVs. That's what they were trying to go for here. It's not really. It's got a tiny little differential in the rear and tiny little axles. But the point is, when you go over like certain gravel or dirt roads or something like that, they want you to not have a jostling sensation in the cabin. They don't want you to get car sick. They wanted you to maintain a comfortable ride, if you will, a non-car sick like ride quality, even over dirt and gravel, things like that. So they determined that a simpler suspension architecture in the rear will kind of help out with that. Not really sure how true that is, but I have to admit they have done an excellent job here, because I'm assuming all their off-road credentials are there like they say. I'm sure this does do just fine over gravel and all that, but they haven't sacrificed anything here on the pavement where it really matters, where you're actually going to be spending time. Because as I already mentioned, this handles and feels and rides identical to the CX-5, which is a great thing. That's high praise for sure. Regarding the front suspension, we have here a strut-based suspension like with most of these normal everyday SUVs in this class and category, which is fine. From a handling perspective, they've really nailed it here, because you can fling this thing into corners and it manages the body roll so well. It's got a great dynamic. I will say the brakes do feel a bit soft, a bit spongy. I mean, you really do have to get in on these brakes. So that is one of the cons I've noticed with the driving. It's the brakes. Just put some better brake pads on here and you should be fine. But it's the handling, it's the steering, all that is correct. They've done a great job with it. The steering has the perfect amount of weight. There's confidence here when you whip this car around. You can take long sweeping corners in this vehicle, and this SUV remains neutral, balanced, all that good stuff. I mean, you just saw me just whip it into that corner, just throw it in there, and the car just, there's no roll with it. That's so well mitigated and so well controlled. And this is why their suspension architecture is just all irrelevant to me. What matters here for me is how the car feels out on the road, and there's just no sacrifices here. It doesn't feel like this is a car that's taken any shortcuts. It's just all well done. Now, I should talk about the engine, because this is the turbocharged unit, this 4-cylinder. So this car produces 256 horsepower, 320 pounds-feet of torque. The regular 4-cylinder non-turbo will only produce 186 horsepower and 186 pounds-feet of torque. Honestly, that's fine for most families. I don't mind the regular 4-cylinder at all. But you have to keep in mind, with this turbocharged engine, you do have to utilize premium fuel to get the most out of it, to get the most amount of horsepower. Because otherwise, if you do put regular fuel, it'll drop down to 226 horsepower and 310 pounds-feet of torque, I believe, just so you know. But you can put regular in these turbo engines if you want. It'll just decrease the power and torque. With the non-turbocharged 4-cylinder, it doesn't matter. You can use regular and it doesn't affect anything. And when I tested the regular 4-cylinder, I mean, you just needed to wring it out a little bit more. You have to really step on it to get the maximum power, because that's just how naturally aspirated engines work. With this turbo model, you can just ease into the throttle and you're already off and going. And we have here the same excellent 6-speed automatic, which I have continuously praised in other Mazda reviews. I don't have an issue with this 6-speed. I will say the fuel economy isn't really that great. I believe it is rated to do around 24 city and 29 on the highway, something along those lines. I typically get around 20 in the city and like 27 out on the highway, so I don't quite meet Mazda EPA numbers. A lot of the competition using CVTs or 8-speed automatics, they will definitely get better real world fuel economy, unlike Mazda. But this is so good in terms of the way that it reacts. You can get on the paddle shifters and the car will do a great job shifting down for you. But honestly, I just drive around in the comfort mode and I stomp on it, and I definitely get the power that I need easily. So power is not an issue. One of the interesting things is the way they have tuned this chassis, right? Because when I do that, when I floor it in this car, you don't feel the weight transfer taking place when you accelerate or when you decelerate. When you're hard on the brakes, you don't feel that either. So it's just a non-fatiguing experience for the passengers, for the drivers. It's really all well done. So I think if you go with the non-turbo engine, you'll get a 1 mpg increase in the city and on the highway, but it's really not a big deal. Most people, they like the non-turbo engine because they think it's more reliable, but really, the hindsight is 2020. I would still advise you buying a warranty with any new car. Obviously, a new car will come with a warranty, but once it expires, if you plan on keeping the car longer than 3 or 4 years, I would suggest maybe paying like $2 or $3 grand to extend out that warranty, because you will have carbon buildup issues even with the regular 4-cylinder, since it is direct injected. That's something to keep in mind, but that's only going to take place at around 60, 70, or 80,000 miles, something along those lines. Other things to note: the refinement is very good with these Mazda cars. We don't have double pane glass, which I believe the CX-5 does utilize, but regardless, they're both about the same in terms of how quiet they are, because even out on the highway, the wind noise is pretty well contained. I'm very impressed with that. Most Mazdas do an excellent job with wind noise and controlling that. You only get a bit of road noise coming in at the higher speeds, but that's mainly because we have here the Goodyear tires. Mazda typically uses either the Falcon tires, that's a bit quieter, but also a Continental tire would also be a little bit quieter, I feel like, than these Goodyears. So I don't really think that's a fault of Mazda. And as I already mentioned, the ride quality, even with these 20-inch wheels, it's excellent. If you got one of the base model CX-50s, you could get 17-inch wheels, which could help iron out some of these smaller bumps even better, but really it's not necessary. I'm aware that there is also a Meridian model that's supposed to be the true off-road spec with 18-inch wheels and Falcon all-terrain tires, and if you get like the Apex package on top of the Meridian model, then you can get some interesting looking roof racks, graphics painted onto the hood of the car. The other thing I've noticed with most Mazdas, they do have a tendency to torque steer a little bit. This one, they've done a great job controlling it. It's much like the new 2022 CX-5 I tested. They've done a great job in reducing that. I still get those tendencies here and there, but it's really nothing. This is a great handling machine. Very confidence inspiring, as I've already stated. Stability out of the speed is also good because this weighs a touch under 4,000 pounds, and a Mazda CX-5 top level, trim level similar to this is maybe 50 to 60 pounds lighter, just so you know. And I also like the fact that they have made all-wheel drive as standard with both the CX-5 and the CX-50 for these 2022/2023 model years. I think that just brings great value to these cars. But I will break down the trim levels and the pricing towards the end of this video. For right now, let's get into the interior segment, and then we can talk about the trunk, and then we'll end off. All right, let's hop inside of this interior space. Of course, we have keyless entry. Just put your hand behind the handle and it will unlock for you. So let's start out with the door panel first. This is the fully loaded Premium Plus, the Turbo Premium Plus model. So we have literally everything here, like the 12 speaker Bose audio system. We also have this very unique stitching, this golden copper type of stitching going all throughout the interior of this car and the seats, which I find to be a really nice touch. I think it stands out. I appreciate this copper / gold trend that's taking place. I think it's just different from, you know, regular black or red stitching that we're accustomed to, right? In typical Mazda fashion, all the buttons and switches, they all feel good to interact with and to press. And these are one-touch automatic windows for all 4 windows. We have here a decent amount of space for your bottles, but not a whole lot. And we do have soft touch material here, this type of leather material on the door panel, and we have hard touch plastic towards the bottom, if you care to know. Let's move on to the front seats now. Once again, as I already mentioned, we have here this copper / gold piping and stitching going all throughout here. And we do have electric seats like you would expect in the fully loaded model. If you got the base model of the CX-50, you would have manual adjusted seats, just so you know. And we have plenty of lumbar support here as well with these seats. Mazda does a great job designing them because they want you to be ergonomic and comfortable on a long trip, and these seats definitely accommodate you on a long trip very well. I've not had any issues on a long trip. Let's just go ahead, hop inside now. Close the door. Push button start. That's standard on any Mazda CX-50. There we have it. We got the classic Mazda steering wheel, which I really appreciate, and I do like to grip onto this. This is kind of on the thinner side, but again, it's really satisfactory to operate the steering wheel on an everyday basis. You have your everyday controls right here for your volume and your track selection. This info button, that's pretty much how you access the gauge cluster screen and the information that it shows. It's all accessed through the info button. And if you want to reset your MPGs, just hold on to the info button. You can answer your Bluetooth calls from this button as well, and you can drop them here. And this is essentially for your radar cruise control, setting them and desetting them. It's all done through the right side of the steering wheel buttons. We have automatic headlights, we have automatic windshield wipers. We also have these plastic paddle shifters, which do react extremely well, but you can just leave this in the automatic mode and it does a phenomenal job because it is a 6-speed automatic. They've been fine-tuning this for years now. They have it down pat. It's perfect in this car. So you just leave it in automatic, does a great job shifting down for you. But being the fully loaded model, I mean, the main changes with this is going to be the fact that you get a 360 camera that's only available on the fully loaded CX-50s. Turn this down a little bit. And we also have heated rear seats, which I will touch on during the rear seat segment. So that's pretty much the main changes and main upgrades for the fully loaded CX-50. Here you can turn off your parking sensor, you can turn on your parking cameras in case you are parking forwards and you want to see what's in front of you. You can just press this button and it will show you a pretty nice display. You can see clearly what's in front of you. I'm not going to lie, that is pretty useful, and it is nice having the 360 cam and this fully loaded model just to get that feature. But it's totally not necessary, but you know, it's there if you need it. You have your traction control off button, your iStop off, and you can access your tailgate trunk release from here and your 2 memory seat settings can be accessed right here as well. Let's talk about this infotainment. So standard, you will get a 8.8-inch screen, but we have here the 10.25-inch screen, and it is a touchscreen, but it's only touch enabled for the Apple CarPlay. I've noticed, like, you can't just do that, but nor do you really desire to do that, because I feel like this control knob does a phenomenal job getting through this screen. It's very well designed, easy to use. There's no learning curve with this. This is genuinely one of my most favorite infotainments that I have ever used. It's pretty much all just black and white and easy to navigate, get around. I don't mind that it's kind of a tablet that's just stuck on the screen here. Many car manufacturers are doing that. I don't really care about it. I'm just happy that it's easy to use. Pretty much anybody can get in here, and you don't have to fuss around with the technology in this all too much. They do a good job of implementing everything that you need very well. And you also have here wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is a massive blessing. I really appreciate that. And the 12-speaker Bose audio system, also worth getting. But I will say, you do have to pay up a lot of money to get the Bose audio system. Even if you went with the regular 4-cylinder model, the non-turbocharged unit, you have to pay around $37,000 to $38,000 to get the Bose audio, just so you know. And at that point, you're so close to buying the turbocharged model anyway, you might as well just get that and pay like $40,000 or $41,000 and get the more powerful engine while you're at it. So I don't like how the Bose audio system is such a high-spec premium option. They really do make you pay up to get it, but it is worth it. I won't deny that. With the CX-5 Mazda, I've noticed that they offer a 10-speaker Bose audio. Here we have a 12-speaker, but they pretty much both sound identical to each other. Just thought I would mention it, though. Another thing that I really like with Mazdas is the climate control buttons. They're always physical. They're always easy to use. They have a nice clicky sensation to them. So that's always well done. You have your heated steering wheel button here. Heated and cooled seats for the front 2 seats. The rear seats are only heated. You cannot option it with cooled seats in the back, but not a big deal. Overall, they did try to differentiate this interior space with the Mazda CX-5 by giving you some vertical air vents here to play with. It's a nice design touch. And again, you have that really cool stitch work here as well on the front dash. Add some character. You have a bit of storage space up here in the front with a 12-volt. 2 cup holders in the front. Your traditional gear lever knob with the manual controls here. This is your mode selection. You only have 3 modes: off-road, normal, and sport. I just leave it in normal. Does a fantastic job. Not a problem. We do have here an electronic parking brake, which will turn on automatically when you put the vehicle into park, and when you put it into drive, it'll automatically disengage for you. This is your control knob for the infotainment. Again, has an excellent clicking sensation, and you have your commonly used shortcut buttons here as well for the navigation, your music / entertainment, your home button. You also have a physical volume knob that you can play with here. Compared to the CX-5 interior, one of the changes is with the headroom. So apparently we have here less headroom, like a few tenths of an inch less headroom compared to the CX-5, but we gain a few tenths of an inch of leg room in the back. Again, it's pretty much identical in size to the CX-5. But what's not identical is the fact that we have here a pano sunroof. This is a first for Mazda. The CX-50 is literally the first model to get this. So if you enjoy that, well, there you go. We also have here a bezel-less mirror with the garage home link buttons attached to them. We do have here a glove box, but not too much space in there, as you can see, especially when you have the books. So that's a bit of a con. And we do have here the split open armrest. So you have some space to play with, and 2 USB ports here as well for charging. And as you can see, we have the wireless charging pad, but honestly, it's not that great because I've noticed with my iPhone 13 Pro Max, if I place my phone on here with my case on, it will not register and it will not charge. I have to take my phone case off to charge my phone, which is a huge con. I tested out a Ford Maverick recently and an Audi Q5. Both of those cars, I could use the wireless charging pad with my phone case on it. This is annoying, and some people say that you have to get the fully loaded model to get the wireless charging pad, but I've noticed even on the lesser trim levels, you can just buy this as a separate $300 option or something. But, you can let me know in the comment section below on the availability of the wireless charging pad. Regardless, they do need to fix it so I can use it with my phone case. We do have your electric powered seats for the passenger. However, they do not get lumbar support for the passenger, but at least it's electric. Pretty much all the safety features are standard, like the blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. I really appreciate Mazda giving you that as standard. I remember in the past with the CX-5 at least, they would give you the heated seats in the front as standard, but even on the CX-5, they've moved that up to the preferred package or one trim level up. So they no longer offer standard heated seats, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. But overall, this is pretty much the same Mazda interior space that you are used to. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing drastic, just subtle changes to differentiate this as the off-road Mazda, but we all know what this really is. I mean, it's basically like a different version of the CX-5, even though it rides on its own platform and everything like I already mentioned. This is just another alternative at the dealership for you to pick up, essentially a cooler looking CX-5 from the outside. But let's go ahead and let's transition over to the rear seats, and then we'll talk about the trunk, and then we can end this review off. All right, let's go ahead, unlock the vehicle, open up this rear door, close this so the car doesn't freak out. And as you can see, that's your leg room in the back. These are your seats. Let's hop in. I am 5'11". Sorry, I didn't mention that before. Weigh about 190 pounds, and it's very easy for me to get in and out of this car. The seat is set to my driving position, and as you can see, I have plenty of legroom space back here. It's not even an issue because Mazda is smart. They have mounted this front seat up a little bit higher, so that gives you plenty of toe room or feet room, so you can stow your feet underneath the front seats, and that gives you a couple extra inches of legroom. Plus, the seat backing is soft, so you can kind of dig your knees into that if you need to, and that will help with your legroom as well. But this is so comfortable. This is not even remotely an issue. Even the center transmission tunnel isn't super large, so it's not very intrusive. You can actually fit an adult in the center seat here without too many issues, and my head is not rubbing up against the ceiling here, so that's good. So in a pinch, if you needed to, you can have 5 adults travel in the CX-50. It's not too bad. And as I already mentioned, we have here like a 1/10 of an inch more legroom compared to the CX-5. It's literally not even worth mentioning, but that's actually kind of abysmal because the thing is, the CX-50 overall, as I already mentioned, it is 5 inches longer than the CX-5, and we have here a 4-inch increase in the wheelbase compared to the CX-5. So this is a 110-inch wheelbase compared to the 106-inch wheelbase found in the CX-5. But we don't necessarily get 4 inches more leg room, but we do have plenty of trunk room, and I'll cover that next. But before I do, the comfort of the seats certainly do continue. We still have that excellent stitch work going on here and some of that piping as well, which I think many people will like. And because this is that fully loaded model, we do have here heated rear seats with some USB as well and vents to play with. And here's another look at the pano sunroof. Nice. And we also have here a center armrest with 2 cup holders in it. And that's pretty much a look at the rear seats. Also, we don't have a storage pocket here, but we do behind the passenger seat, just so you know. With all that established, let's go ahead and let us transition over it to the trunk space now. Okay, we have a handle here in the back. Just press that button, opens up, and this is what I'm saying. You have a lot of space in the trunk of this CX-50. I genuinely think this is more than the CX-5, so I think that's a pro. And here we have a spare tire, which I think many people will also appreciate. And you have a bit of storage on the sides here as well if you want to put like some milk in that little corner there if you want. And putting down the rear seats, very simple in this car. You have 2 levers, press that, and it's not electronic, it's mechanical, but it does a great job in releasing the seats. And of course, as soon as I say that, I jinx myself, and I think, okay, just needed some persuasion. But anyway, with the seats folded down, yeah, I think this is plenty practical for most people. Should be able to fit just about anything you need in there. The height is pretty decent as well. I will say, if you're a taller individual, you might be rubbing your head up against the rear tailgate, but you can also press this lock button back here as well if you want to lock the doors just by pressing that button, or you can just close the trunk as well in a normal fashion. But that's pretty much a look at the trunk. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into the conclusion segment now. Conclusions on the 2023 Mazda CX-50. Obviously, what you saw from the driving segment, the interior segment, is another excellent Mazda product. They really do seem to deliver every time. There's not really a single Mazda car that I don't like or feels strange to me. They're all great cars. I get what this is trying to do. It's trying to look cool. It's trying to give you some cool wheels. It's trying to bank off of that off-road, I don't even know, just the off-road prestige, I guess. And then the towing capability. I mean, that's really what you're getting here on top of the CX-5. Mainly, it's the cooler looks of this versus the CX-5. But if I was a normal family person, married, had kids, whatever, obviously the smart money will always go towards the CX-5. In fact, the more base model CX-5s, like a preferred model, one step up from the base, that's really where the smart money lies, because I would buy the CX-50 if I had more money and I was shopping for one of the turbo models of the CX-5. Then sure, I would pay up a little bit more to get the CX-50 because it looks cooler without sacrificing what makes Mazda truly great, which is their refinement, their engine choices, the speed, the luxurious cabin. It's got all that here with the CX-50. So if you wanted a true luxury product without the douche factor of an Audi or a Benz or a BMW, then yeah, Mazda is a great premium choice that's not going to incite any envy or jealousy from your neighbors or from the workplace, etc. It's still a modest Mazda, and nobody's going to hate you for driving this. So yeah, I would go with this because this genuinely is a nice looking machine, and I would like to have this on my driveway as opposed to a CX-5. One thing I've noticed for the 2023 model years of the Mazda SUVs is they're not giving you heated seats anymore as standard like in the base models as they used to. Now you have to go one trim level up to get the heated seats. So it is what it is. At least the all-wheel drive is standard, and a bunch of other things like all the safety features, that's all standard, and I really appreciate that. Another thing to note, these SUVs are extremely safe. I mean, one of the safest family SUVs that you can possibly buy into. IIHS recently updated their side crash test safety, and they've upped the speed on those tests, and the CX-5 Mazda still has good marks for side crash test safety. That is really remarkable. Most SUVs have failed after IIHS upgraded their tests, so it's amazing that Mazda still prevails in that regards. I think I mentioned this in the interior segment. These doors, they don't feel quite as strong or as premium feeling as, I don't know, like a German car, for instance. Yet that doesn't really matter because it's still one of the safest cars you can possibly put your family into. So that's amazing. And even though the CX-50 has not been tested yet, it's riding on its new platform, I still believe that this will be pretty much just as safe as the CX-5. I don't doubt that. Pretty much every Mazda is an IIHS top safety pick, so that's great. This really just boils down to your budget and what you like. This is a great product. I definitely recommend it, but it just depends on your pocketbook, right? And just depends on where you're at in life. A preferred model, a $30,000 CX-5, you're never going to lose with that. That's always going to be a phenomenal value. These are very premium feeling upscale feeling cars compared to things like a RAV4, which feels like a total cardboard box and like a total turd. I would only buy the RAV4 for the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid models, which are both almost impossible to find now. And another thing to note, Mazda will be introducing a hybrid version of the CX-50, and Mazda will be borrowing that same hybrid power plant out of the RAV4s. When they do that, I really hope they refine and they smoothen out the hybrid battery pack drivetrain system, because the RAV4 engines, they just sound very nasty. It's not a good sounding engine. So hopefully they find a way to refine that, or maybe they'll just borrow the battery pack and they'll still use their own Mazda engines. I don't know. I did not mention this during the driving segment, but these Mazda 4-cylinders, they genuinely sound pretty good. I like the way this turbo 4-cylinder sounds for once. I like that they've implemented a bit of that blow-off sound when you get off the throttle. I think that's a nice touch. And also, it has a more aggressive tone to the way this 4-cylinder sounds. In fact, the Miata is one of the best sounding 4-cylinders, along with the Honda S2000, I think. So, yeah, good job there in terms of giving you a somewhat charismatic engine experience, even though these are just 4-cylinders. I really appreciate that. Certainly consider buying it. And if you are an owner of the CX-50, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching. The next video will be on the end screen here, and I'll see you there.